I bought a farm, and something walks the tree line at night. I bought the farm because it was cheap, and because I thought distance from people would solve most of my problems. The land stretched wide and flat, ending at a thick forest that wrapped around the back of the property like a wall. The trees were old, older than anything that I was used to seeing. Their trunks were thick and scarred, and their branches twisted together so tightly that sunlight barely touched the ground beneath them. Even during the day the woods looked dim and heavy, like light went there to die. And when the wind moved the trees, it didn't sound like leaves rustling. It sounded slow, deep, almost like something was breathing. The realtor described it as peaceful. He said the previous owner had to leave suddenly due to family issues. He spoke quickly when he mentioned it, like he wanted to move past that part, but I didn't ask for details. And at the time, I didn't even want the details. So my wife and I moved in with our 2 children at the start of spring. The house was old but solid, the kind of place that creaked and shifted as it settled. We unpacked slowly, fixing small things as we went, and I spent my times repairing broken fence posts, cleaning out the barn, and bringing in livestock. Chickens filled the coop with constant noise, goats wandered the field curious and loud, and a small herd of cattle grazed near the far fence. The good thing was the animals adjusted quickly, far faster than we did. Sometimes at night the farm became quiet in a way that I wasn't prepared for. No traffic, no distant hum of engines, just insects chirping, wind moving through grass, and darkness so thick that it felt physical. It pressed against the house, against the windows, and I remember standing on the front porch one night, looking out across the fields, and telling my wife that it felt like we were completely alone out there. And at the time I meant it as a good thing. About 3 weeks in, the animals started acting strange. The chickens were the first ones. One night, just after midnight, I woke up to a frantic squawking from their coop. And it wasn't a normal noise. It wasn't restless movement or a scuffle over space. This was panic. It was sharp, desperate, continuous. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and ran outside, already expecting to see a fox or a raccoon bolting away. But when I reached the coop, everything looked untouched. Their wire was intact and the door was latched. The dirt was smooth, undisturbed. But inside every chicken was packed into the same corner. Their feathers puffed out and their bodies were trembling. Some were even standing on top of others, desperate to get to higher ground, away from something that only they could sense. And their eyes reflected the beam of my flashlight, wide and unblinking. They didn't calm down until I backed away. The worrisome part was that after that, the behavior spread. The goats refused to graze near the tree line. They'd walk toward it and then suddenly stop, digging their hooves into the dirt. They pulled against their leads hard to strain the rope, bleeding constantly while staring into the forest. Their ears staying pinned back, and their bodies stayed tense, like they were ready to bolt at any second. Even our dog Hank, he changed too. He stopped sleeping by the fence at night and started hiding under our porch. As soon as the sun went down, he scuffled under. He would growl for hours, low and steady, aimed directly at the woods. Sometimes he whimpered like he was hurt, but no matter how many times I called out to him, he wouldn't come out. And that's when I started noticing the feeling. The sense of being watched by something. It happened most often when I worked near the trees. I'd be repairing a gate or carrying feed when my chest would suddenly tighten for no reason, and the back of my neck would prickle. Every instinct I had told me to turn around, and every time I did, my eyes went straight to the forest. The first night that I actually saw one, I thought it was just fog. It was just after sunset. The sky was still faint with a blue glow. Enough to see the outlines of the land, but not much else. I was locking the barn when something pale moved between the trees, and at first it drifted slowly, almost lazily, like mist sliding through the trunks. Then it stepped forward. The shape was tall, too tall to be a person. Its body looked thin and stretched, pale enough to stand out clearly against the dark woods. I couldn't make out details at that distance, only that it stood upright, the edge of my land, facing towards the fields. I shouted without thinking, just a sharp, instinctive yell meant to scare somebody off, but the figure didn't react. And after several long seconds it stepped backwards into the trees, and it vanished. I told myself, hey, this is just a person. It's just somebody trespassing. It's just somebody lost. But still, I didn't get much sleep that night. And then the next evening, there were two. They appeared as the sun went below the horizon, pale shapes pacing along the tree line. They didn't walk the way people do. Their movements were uneven. They were delayed, like their bodies were struggling to follow simple instructions. Their legs bent at angles that made my stomach turn. Sometimes their torsos twisted first, dragging the rest of their bodies along after. And they didn't make a sound. The animals would react instantly. The cattle slammed into the fence hard enough to shake the posts, and the goats screamed and clustered near the barn, pressing against each other. Hank, he lost control. He was barking and snarling, throwing himself against the porch railing as if something stood there, just beyond his reach. I went back inside and I grabbed my shotgun. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted them gone. I stepped onto the porch, I chambered around and fired a single warning shot into the air. The blast echoed across the fields. But again, the figures, they didn't react. One of them turned its head slowly towards me, and that's when I realized there was nothing where its face should have been. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, pale skin stretched tight over a shape that suggested that a skull was underneath. They stayed there for hours, pacing, and then stopping, and then watching. Every night after that they came a little closer. Sometimes they moved faster, running along the tree line with limbs flailing wildly, bending and snapping into shapes that made it hard to keep watching. And other times they just froze, mid-step, twisted and contorted like statues of broken men. And then one night, they reached my house. I woke up to Hank growling, not barking, but growling, low and deep, kind of sound that vibrates in your chest. I sat up in bed, and I saw it. A pale shape pressed against my bedroom window. Its head tilted sideways, its body folded at an angle that didn't make sense, like it had bent itself to fit the frame. The smooth white surface of its face hovered inches from the glass. I shouted for my wife and grabbed the shotgun, but by the time I reached the window, the figure was gone. Outside there were no marks. There was no broken grass where it should have been running. Nothing disturbed. After that, the livestock began to die. A goat was found near the fence, stiff and cold, eyes wide open, mouth open, like it had died in terror. A cow collapsed in the field days later without a visible injury. The vet couldn't explain it. He said it looked like extreme stress, the kind that shuts the body down from the inside. All of these things culminating on top of each other, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. And then the final encounter happened early one morning. Fog rolled low across the field, swallowing sound and blurring the fence posts. I was checking the far edge of the property when the feeling returned, stronger than ever. My chest tightened, my vision narrowed. I turned, and one of them stood less than 20 feet away. Up close it was much worse. Its skin stretched tight over a frame that didn't match human anatomy. Its limbs were too long, its joints bent in places that it shouldn't. Its chest rose and fell in shallow movements, though I couldn't hear it breathing. when it shifted its weight, its body made soft, popping sounds like wet branches snapping after a storm. And it leaned in towards me. As I sat there, bewildered at what I was seeing, I just instinctively ran. I ran as far and as hard as I could, back into the farmhouse, locking every door behind me. I told my wife, "It's time to go. Grab the kids, let's go." And we sold the farm within the month. We left behind equipment, animals, plans, and even now, years later, I still wake up some nights with the feeling that something is watching me from outside my window, from the other side of my fence, from the other side of my property. And I can't stop wondering if those figures were never trying to enter my land. They were trying to make sure that nothing ever left.